So joining us right now, Peter Schweizer, the most talked about author in America. His book, Clinton Cash, shed the spotlight on exactly how they followed those rules back when she was Secretary of State. Thanks for joining us, Peter.
Oh, it's great to be on with you guys. Thanks for having me.
It's always good to talk to you. So here's what's really fascinating about this response from Bill Clinton. Yeah, we're going to try to follow as close as we can all the rules we followed when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State as we run the foundation. Well, Peter, could you tell us exactly how those rules worked out when she was Secretary of State?
Not so well.
Yeah.
And the rules, by the way, weren't set up by conservative Republicans or me. They were set up by President-elect Barack Obama, who had this concern and made it a condition of her becoming Secretary of State that they, number one, have complete transparency on donors, and number two, follow a series of procedures for getting approval for speeches and things like that. And what we point out in the book is that there are a massive number of non-disclosed donations. We found them not by looking at the Clinton list of disclosed donations, but by going through Canadian tax records.
Yeah.
And we now know that there are more than 1,100 that were not disclosed. We also know, by the way, that some of the disclosed donors are actually not people that gave money, that the money came from somewhere else. There's an Indian politician named Amar Singh who's listed as giving between $1 million and $5 million. We point out in the book he doesn't have that kind of money, and he just issued a statement a couple days ago saying, yeah, you're right, it wasn't my money. So even the disclosed donors aren't actually honest in reflecting who provided the funding.
But Peter Schweizer, you know their pushback, you know the argument. There's no evidence that shows that Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, did anything for any company or foreign government as a result of a donation given to the foundation. First of all, is that true? And second of all, is that really the standard?
No, I don't think that is the standard, and I think the evidence is pretty clear. You have a pattern of behavior, and look, if you look at what happened to Governor McDonnell in Virginia, you look at what's happening to Senator Menendez, you look at what happened to the governor of Oregon regarding these issues of money and favors being given, the fact pattern here is far more compelling than it was in any of those three cases. And my point is that, look, you need somebody to investigate this that has subpoena power. You can say it's a coincidence if you find a couple of cases where somebody gives them money and a favorable action is taken as Secretary of State. But when you find dozens of examples of that, it just does not pass the smell test. And for Bill Clinton to just say, well, I asked Hillary about it and she said she never did it. I mean, come on. This is ridiculous.
She told me it was fine. Nothing to worry about, Bill. It's all good. Well, listen, the thing that did happen is almost as soon as this book came out and we began to see some of the details and some of the other reporting on it, they announced at the Clinton Global Initiative they're going to refile their taxes, which suggests that they realized that they'd been caught red-handed. I mean, do you buy their argument that, this was just an oversight?
No, it's not an oversight. I mean, when you make the errors that they made on their tax filings, when you failed to disclose 1,100 donors, I mean, look, I work at a nonprofit. I've worked at other nonprofits. It's pretty clear. You have a donor database. People send you money. You put it in the donor database because you have to disclose that to the IRS. You have to keep records so you know who gave you what. If you're not disclosing that, you are actively taking things out of your donor database before you're sharing it with the public.
Right.
So there's no way this is a mistake or an accounting error. I think at one point Bill Clinton said, well, they filled the forms out wrong. I mean, come on. This is not the 1980s where you fill out these reports by hand. It's all electronic. And so if there are things that are not appearing, 1,100 donors that are not appearing, it's because you are taking them out of your data set.
Now, the other thing was that it seems very clear that Hillary violated the memorandum of understanding that she signed before she became Secretary of State. Now, that doesn't carry the weight of law, but she certainly violated the promises that she made to the Obama administration about how they would conduct their business during that time.
Well, you're right. And what's so funny about this is their spin is, well, we have voluntarily chosen to be transparent. They didn't voluntarily choose to be transparent. They resisted and fought this. And President Obama, to his credit, said, look, this is a condition for you to become Secretary of State. So they not only violated the memorandum of understanding, they also went against Hillary's sworn testimony before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee during her confirmation hearings, where she said, we will disclose all contributors to the Clinton Foundation. And Bill Clinton went on CNN and said, we will have, quote unquote, complete transparency as it relates to the Clinton Foundation. So it's not just the Memorandum of Understanding, it's the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and it's the American people that they lied to.
And who chaired that committee that she lied to get her confirmation? John Kerry, the next Secretary of State.
That's exactly right.
Peter Schweizer, I got to ask you, everyone had raised eyebrows when they saw, wow, the New York Times has an agreement with Peter Schweizer on this book, and they shared information, and they did their own investigation. The New York Times, wow. I got to ask you, you and I, we worked together back when I was with Breitbart. I've known you a while. I remember when you brought out Throw Them All Out. That New York Times, are they going to get a crack at your Jeb Bush book, too, and was that sort of packaged together?
Well, there's been a slight misreporting. I told Joshua Green from Bloomberg that we're doing research on Jeb, and we're doing a report. But that has been morphed by Politico and others into a book.
I see.
We're looking at Jeb's 8 years tenure as governor. It certainly is not as long-lasting as the Clintons' public service, and it's not as global in reach. So it's a report, but yes, we are sharing that information with media outlets already. Look, the arrangement with the New York Times and ABC and the Washington Post that I had was kind of pretty straightforward. We found some interesting things. I went to these top reporters and said, hey, you might want to look into this. They are certainly not cream puffs. They looked into it themselves and confirmed what we found, and we expect to do the same thing as it involves the Jeb Bush story. And the pattern is the same, by the way, in the sense of what we're doing to research this. With Jeb Bush, as with the Clintons, it's follow the money. Where's the money coming from? When is it being given? And are there favors that are being done in return? It's a pretty simple but difficult formula to follow because you have to do a lot of digging.
And to me, the two big stories about the Clintons are sort of a 1-2 punch. We got all your reporting, which is very, very interesting and has been verified in many ways that raise a lot of concerns. And then on the other story about the Clintons is that, there were 30,000 emails, which could shed a lot of light on some of this that are gone.
No, that's a great point. I finished the book, and then that story came out, and a lot of people were saying, what was on those emails? I would be a betting man in this case, and I would bet that those 30,000 quote-unquote private emails, they would categorize emails related to the Clinton Foundation, related to Clinton Foundation donors, related to people paying bills for speeches. They would categorize that as quote-unquote private correspondence,
right,
even though it had to do with her actions as Secretary of State. So I do not think that these are two disconnected or unconnected events. I think it goes at the heart of what they were doing with this infrastructure they had established to take all this foreign money.
Okay, and just very quickly, is there something in the book that you think is really interesting that really hasn't been focused on too much?
I think it's gotten a lot of coverage. The thing that I keep emphasizing to people is the pattern. And look particularly at the speaking fees. Bill Clinton in 2008 is getting paid a little less than $200,000 a speech overseas. Suddenly, overnight, in 2009, it triples. Yeah. The question is why. I don't think he became 3 times more eloquent. I think it's because his wife became Secretary of State. And by the way, those people paying those inflated speaking fees had business before the State Department and got favorable action from her.
Peter, I just want to make sure I didn't miss something. Did you just say that your research shows that any email that Hillary Clinton may have sent having to do with the foundation was considered a personal email and was not turned over? Did you say that is your opinion, or is that something that you've actually discovered and is fact?
No, that's what they've said. They've said that only actions related to her official communication at the State Department is regarded as public. Everything else, and that would certainly include the Clinton Foundation, they regard as private.
Wow. So those are the emails that are now undiscoverable, wiped out, along with the yoga lessons. All right. Thank you so much, Peter Schweizer.
Thank you.
Great stuff.
Yeah, good stuff.
Thanks, guys.